Another month has come and gone, and it's time for a monthly reading wrap up. So for the month of July, I read 9 books. I read 4 romance, 3 fantasy, and 2 mysteries / thrillers. The first book I read was actually a reread. This is Book Lovers by Emily Henry, and there's some sort of magic in her books because I swear they get better and better every single time that I read them. And this follows Nora Stevens, who is a cutthroat literary agent. She lives in New York City, and her sister Libby really wants to go on a little vacation to Sunshine Falls, North Carolina. So she's hoping that Nora will have a small town experience because Nora's whole life is pretty much books and her work, which coexist. Not that there's anything wrong with her whole life being books, but Libby is hoping that her sister will just maybe have like a small town romance. But it's actually very ironic because Nora ends up running into Charlie, and Charlie is her rival from back in New York City, and he is a bookish, brooding editor. And in my mind, Charlie is Dylan O'Brien. And I don't know if this is going to be made into a movie, but if it is, please cast Dylan O'Brien. Please. And I like how Emily Henry's books are not only about romance, so this really dives into the sister dynamic a lot. So Nora is the older sister, and she's trying to kind of figure out what that means and what her role is, especially now that her and her sister are adults. So I gave this one 5 stars. Emily Henry is just perfection. Next up, I read a young adult fantasy novel. This is called Twin Crowns. I did do a little reading vlog on this, so I will link that down below. But I just had so much fun reading this, and I would recommend this if you're looking for kind of a lighter fantasy. I also recommend listening to a Harry Potter ambiance video while reading this because that's what I ended up doing, and it just really added to the experience. And this follows 2 sisters. You have Rose, who is the princess, and then you have Ren, who was raised in a totally different environment. She was actually raised by a community of witches. So while she is pretending to be the princess, the man that she is betrothed to has a bodyguard, and she keeps running into this bodyguard in the castle, and there's like this forbidden romance, and I absolutely loved it. And so this has like 2 separate romance plots going on, and then it also has a lot of adventure, and it has magic and friendship, and I just really loved it. And I'm also very excited to read the second book. I actually just got the second book on my Kindle from the library. It's called Cursed Crowns, and I think it's going to be really good. But I gave this one 4 stars, and I definitely recommend. Next, I read The Wicked King by Holly Black, and this is the second book in the Cruel Prince trilogy. And I feel like everyone has read this trilogy except for me. I'm very late to the game, but I gave the first book in this trilogy a 3-star rating, and I just wasn't crazy about the first book. I feel like it was pretty slow paced, but I've heard from a lot of people that the first book is really just building up the world and the plot. So I did enjoy this one more than the first book, and I gave this one a 3.5 rating. I do wish that there was more romance in these books. I don't know if the third book has more romance, hopefully, but so far I would say that the enemies to lovers romance is definitely a subplot. The main plot is more like politics based, and you have Jude, who is a mortal girl, and she's very ambitious, and she really wants to prove herself in the fairy kingdom. And in these books, the fae are not friendly. They are tricksters. They definitely cannot be trusted. And so with the titles of The Cruel Prince and The Wicked King, it's definitely not clickbait titles. Like, it's very true. But it's interesting because in this book, I feel like you get a lot more of Cardan's backstory. I feel like I still don't know him fully, but I do think that I'm starting to understand why he ended up the way that he is, because you learn more about his upbringing and things like that. But the ending, oh my goodness, I feel like it was a very strong ending but it was also like very much a cliffhanger, and there was a very big decision that was made, and I want to know why, and I just need to know more about Carden. He is so interesting to me. So yeah, 3.5, and I'm excited to keep going with the trilogy. Next up, I did a reread of We'll Always Have Summer, and this is the third and final book in the To All the Boys I've Loved Before trilogy. I've talked about this trilogy so many times, so I'll keep this short, but basically I feel like this is my favorite book in the trilogy just because I love the way that this ends. Although I do really love how comforting the first book is. But yeah, overall, I was very, very happy with the ending of the trilogy. I just think this is such a sweet childhood friends to lovers story. And it definitely has the beachy feel. So if you want to squeeze in some more summer reads before summer's over, I definitely recommend this trilogy, and this is just so nostalgic for me, so I gave this 5 stars. Then I read Emma of 83rd Street, and this is also another childhood friends to lovers story, and this is a retelling of Jane Austen's Emma. I've never actually read the original Emma, but after reading this, I'm really interested. I don't know how similar this is compared to the original, but I did enjoy this romance, and it was a slow burn and it was really sweet. And I also love that this took place in New York, and I gave this a 3.75 rating. So after reading some romance books, I really wanted something very fast-paced, and so I ended up reading a thriller on my Kindle. It's called 5 Survive, and it's by Holly Jackson, and Holly Jackson is the author of A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I absolutely loved that book, and this book did not disappoint. This was so stressful, not gonna lie, but it was so good, and it really had my heart pounding the entire time. And this takes place over the span of 8 hours, and so you have these 6 friends who are on a road trip for spring break, and their RV breaks down in the middle of nowhere, and things go wrong very quickly. And so there's the 6 friends, but only 5 survive. And I gave this 4 stars, but I think I'm actually going to bump this up to a 4.5. Another book I read on my Kindle was The Box in the Woods by Maureen Johnson. This is the 4th book in the Truly Devious series, and this is just such a comfort series for me, and I really enjoyed this story. This follows Stevie Bell, who is home for the summer from Ellingham Academy, and she ends up going to this summer camp because the owner of the camp is wanting to do a podcast covering the Box in the Woods murders that took place at the camp in 1978. So Stevie goes to the camp to help solve the case, and I really liked how there were 2 different timelines. You have present day, where Stevie is solving the case, and then you have 1978, where the murders actually took place. I really love these books because if you want a mystery but nothing that's like too dark or too heavy, I feel like these are perfect because they are young adults, so it doesn't go into like heavy detail. And then also I just think the characters are the perfect blend for a mystery story because they are just so funny, especially Nate. So it's just like that perfect blend of like mystery, intrigue, humor, and so I gave this one a 4-star rating. The only thing I felt like this story was lacking, and this is really more just a personal preference, but I really loved the boarding school setting in the first 3 books, so I was kind of missing that academic vibe in the story, but I still very much enjoyed it and I would recommend. Then I read A Lady's Guide to Scandal by Sophie Irwin, and this is a historical romance novel. I loved her first book, which was A Lady's Guide to Fortune Hunting, but I felt like this one was kind of a miss for me, and I think it's mostly due to the love triangle. I normally love a love triangle. Like, I think it's very entertaining and it definitely like keeps me on my toes, but for this, I just didn't feel like the love triangle was, I don't know, I just felt like it was very messy, and I just didn't feel like I was rooting for the romance to go one way or the other. I love her writing style and I loved like the setting and all of that, but the romance, I don't know, I just felt like it just wasn't for me. So I gave this one a 3-star rating. And the last book I read this month was City of Glass by Cassandra Clare. This is the 3rd book in the Mortal Instruments series, and I am so glad that I kept going with the series because I wasn't crazy about the first 2 books in the series. But once the whole Jace and Clary plot was resolved, I was so relieved. And this book, I can't exactly pinpoint like a specific moment where I like suddenly felt emotionally attached to the characters, but I think just gradually throughout the story, I was like, wait, I am really in this now. Like, I'm really invested and I'm in this for the long haul. I want to know what happens, and surprisingly, I think Isabel is my favorite character, at least so far. I really liked her in this story, and I'm excited to see like more development from her and just the other characters. And then also something that I really, really love about Cassandra Clare's books is that they're all connected in little ways. And with this one, there is a very distant connection between, well, I don't want to say like too specifically, I don't want to give anything away, but it's like very distantly connected to Will Herondale. So Will Herondale is like everything to me. So maybe that is what helped me emotionally connect, but I don't know. I am very much enjoying this, and I gave this 4 stars. So that is it for my reading wrap up, and let me know in the comments what your favorite read was for the month of July, and I will see you guys again soon. Bye.